so disappointed in this list. It's been such
list. I'm not
trash.
gonna lie. I don't know what I was possibly thinking with this 20 to 11. Duh.
Snick and Mud's top 100 games. But does anyone care what they have to say? I know I don't. Cause they may dab, they might scream, they may say some things that are plain wrong. Dab on it, dab on it. But they are dumb bing bongs. My teacher's better.
What's up, everybody? My name is Nick.
I'm Mike.
We are the Brothers Murphy, and that's right. We're going to do through our 20 to 11. We're very, very close. We're going to talk about the shameful game that didn't quite make it to the top 10. It's going to be hilarious.
This is the games that almost were, but are definitely not.
But not quite. Indeed. So we're almost on the top 100, which is bonkers.
I know. We've been working it.
And then also right at when our 10 to 1 comes out, we're also going to have our 100 to 200 out on our Patreon. It'll release a couple days later on YouTube, but we'll also have our 200 to 300 on Patreon because we actually did a lot of comparisons.
That'll be for only patrons. So become a
Patreon.
patron. There's a link in the description or in the card right here. But guess what else, Nick?
What, Mike?
Tabletop Alliance.
Indeed. If you only have like $1 to give, honestly, don't give it to us. Give it to Tabletop Alliance.
Yeah, there's a button right here to donate. You can donate to them. They are a program that helps get games into schools and support teachers for gaming groups and programs.
A couple people who watch us are teachers and signed up, and they're getting games this week at the time of recording this, which is super, super cool. So again, they work fast. And again, it just gets games to help, just like for after school programs and stuff like that. It's just a really, really cool way to get games in the hands of kids. Every dollar you give helps one kid. And it's super, super cool. You can donate your games. There's an address down in the description. But again, we're trying to raise $2,000. We're getting really, really close at the time of recording this.
Let's be past 2,000 by the time we drop the 10 to 1, Nick.
That would be great.
Help us out today. We'd really appreciate it. Everything goes directly to Tabletop Alliance.
Indeed. All right, but that's going to be it for all the plugs and stuff like that. Let's get into our 20 to 11. My number 20 is here because there's just so many dang ways to play it, and that is Orleans.
Yeah, there's, at this point,
Orleans,
modules and versions.
And honestly, that's what keeps it so high. Every time I kept coming up with a comparison with Orleans versus another game, it kept winning because it kept being like, well, I can play it solo. It's great. I can play it cooperatively. It's great. I can play it competitively. There's multiple ways to do that. It's great. This is one of those games that, on its own, Orleans is a great game. It's a great competitive game. It's a bag builder game. I feel like a game that really wasn't the first bag builder, but kind of like would kind of put bag building on the map.
It's kind of the first thing that we recall where it's just like, hey, this is like a deck builder, but with the very different pieces and stuff. Indeed. It's very cool.
And you have a board in front of you with actions on it. You're drawing followers out of this bag, and then those different actions require different followers. This one might need a farmer and a fisherman, and then if you put those down, you can then activate that action. And you're trying to like get different goods. You're trying to put out like little settlements on this, just Euro stuff, right? Also very base.
Trading and whatnot.
Trading, exactly. But there are a bunch of expansions for this game. There's a Trade and Intrigue expansion, which adds a bunch of new ways to play this game.
Recommend.
Super, super cool. But then there's the big expansion, Orleans Invasion, and that is basically a whole second game because there's a whole co-op way to play it where you're fighting out, you're getting ready for an invasion. There are like 3 solo scenarios. There's a 2-player only version in there. And then there's like a 5th-player expansion, which adds like another solo scenario.
Burn that. Obviously don't need any of that, but like, it's there.
We don't need 5th-player expansions. Let's be honest. No one needs it.
No.
But nonetheless, Orleans has so many different ways to play it. When we first played it, we were like, oh, this is super cool. We got the Trade and Intrigue. We really only played with the Intrigue side. Really, really cool. And then we were kind of like, okay, let's get the Invasion one. And then we only played the co-op Invasion one for like a year or two. And then now we're kind of like, you know what? I'm feeling competitive again.
I want to get competitive.
So now we're getting back into the competitive. So, and it just, I played it solo recently. I'm like, oh, that's right. It's super good solo.
It's a game that persists.
There's just so much content for it and so many different ways to play. There's
cool buildings and technology you can develop to give yourself more action spaces and game-breaking rules. It was a lot of fun things.
Already so good, and they just kept adding stuff to make it better and more variable, and it's really, really outstanding. I love Orleans with all the different ways to play it, and it's my number 20, and honestly, it's because I can play it however I want. And it's
I
great.
dig that.
Yeah.
My number 20 is a game, this is one of those games where Nick and I sort of disagree a little bit. It's just that I like it more than you, not that you hate it or anything. It's Underwater Cities.
I think it's fine.
Underwater Cities is a game I really enjoyed by Vladimir Suki. It's a game where kind of it's kind of a pessimistic view of our world. We're like, hey, there's sort of not really room on land and stuff kind of sucks. So since we can't go to another planet and inhabit there, we're going to build under the ocean, and just make cities down there. And I'm like, yeah, that might actually happen. So this is a game where you are trying to build out kind of tunnels and these dome cities that are out under the water for you to kind of increase the prosperity of people.
Kelp stuff.
Yeah, you got kelp farms, desalinization plants, science, corridors and things that you need to have.
Yeah.
The thing that I really, really enjoy about this game, and I think is really clever, is there is a kind of paired play a card and use a worker placement and action space. System in the game, and there are these action spaces kind of in 3 colors or 3 sectors around the board. There's green actions that are like kind of weak, they give you a little something. There's these orange actions that are like decent, and then these red actions which are really powerful. And every time you're going to play a card, and if you can, you want to play a card of the same color to the action space you're going, so green to green or something like that.
Then you get to activate the card.
Get to activate the card, and the cards are the inverse, where the actions of green are kind of weak, the action cards for green are very powerful. So there's that kind of balance point of like, what's the most important thing for me to get? What this card gives me is really powerful, so let me go to a weaker action spot and like kind of pair that, or forego having a really decent card to play. And take a more powerful action. And that right there, that kind of puzzle of just doing that is really cool. And then what's fun about this game is there's kind of 3 or 4 points in the game where you will produce, your little society will produce a bunch of resources based on those kelp farms that you place out onto your board and stuff. All the buildings and things will generate points for you, generate money and resources to then kind of upgrade your tunnels, upgrade your cities to these like red dome cities that start being worth more and more victory points. You kind of build this like point engine as you go. But it's all about that clever card play. There's a little bit of like Terraforming Mars to the game where there's some tableau building with cards that might trigger every time you do a production, or give you like little one-off benefits that you can use, or once per kind of era benefits and things like that. There's a lot of fun stuff to explore. And I just enjoy the card play action balance, and how do I do my best job with that as the game kind of progresses through 3 eras. I think it's really fun, really interesting.
I do want to try. It's been a little while since I played it. I want to try. Every time I play it, I'm always like, why don't I like this more? And I'm not entirely sure, but I don't dislike it like you said.
I feel like there's a good ramp up, because after that first era, you're really poor and you get some stuff. And that second era, you're like, it's kind of tight resources. But you get built up in that last production where you go into the 3rd era, you're like, get loaded, and you're like, start to do stuff. So it feels really good. That's my number 20 underwater cities.
All right, let's get number 19. Into the teens, Mikey.
Into the teens! And we're going to start off in the teens, number 19, with Lost Ruins of Arnok.
Were you a cool person when you were 19?
No.
No, no one was.
Not really. Probably just trying to work on a goatee still or something.
Probably.
Something that I would love to stay buried.
Lost Ruins is great. I'm surprised this is as high for you.
Yeah,
it's great. I mean, I can't remember where
it came up for you already,
and
it was one that I think for both of us, where it's on the downslide. It's got a long tail. It's not like falling off a cliff by any means. And I think it'll plateau at a nice height. The floor is high for this one.
It's like a co-op expansion about to come out.
There's more content coming, and a co-op thing, maybe you focusing on like exploration. Anyway, this game, particularly when we first got our hands on it, first of all, it came with a ton of hype.
Yes.
Everyone was talking about it. We did some coverage for it around Essen with a pretty advanced prototype of the game.
That's right.
And I read the rule book and was like, oh my God, it's Jason Bourne. Like, this is going to be amazing. And then we played it, and it was so fun. Yeah. It's so fun to have this board that is, first of all, as you said when you talked about it, amazing looking. It's so beautiful.
Pretty.
And it's kind of barren. There's nothing there. Why? Because we haven't explored it yet. This is one of those most like sneakily thematic games. I think that's maybe why it's still high up on my list, because it's very satisfying. Everything kind of intuitively integrates into the mechanisms, but it also makes sense for the theming, because you are archaeologists exploring these, once occupied lands and trying to learn about the civilizations that were there once upon a time. Already a cool theme, Indiana Jones stuff.
Right.
This game is so sneakily thematic because you are having to use your compasses, a resource. Everything in this game comes down to turn in this resource to generate that resource, to turn in that resource, to turn it into points. It's just a big resource conversion machine, which I don't mind. I like that in games. So you have to use your compasses in turn 3 compasses, you get to discover a level 1 dig site. And that is you looking through the jungles and stuff, and then, oh my gosh, here's this relic of the past that you discovered. That now gives you an action space you can go to, which produces resources, which you then convert into other resources, which you convert into points. And I love the fact that it's like you have to find the dig sites. There are all of the action cards, because it blends deck building, have these little travel icons, and you have to use a travel icon, a boat, a truck, or you're walking on foot to get to certain things. That's because you're having to travel. You land on the shore where there's some campsites. You have to travel to the dig site. So things like that, I'm like, that makes sense. If you were actually out there in the jungle, this is how this would work. You have to sometimes fly in or take a boat up a river to get to this place. And it's all about getting your resources and then working your way up a research track. Because the ultimate goal, this is kind of the knock I can give this game. The ultimate goal, the thing you have to do, is you have to work your way up that research track. The whole thing is that we are learning and writing down our findings into this research journal, which is just a resource climb, track. And I feel like we think the other part is the main part, and the research thing is the main part, but the research thing is kind of the least sexy part of it. It's not cool, but it's fine, it's one of those things that you have to really kind of impart to people. Say, like, make sure you're doing this. This is where you will get most of your points. You can get items and stuff that give you little abilities. There are artifacts. You can get assistants that give you little things you can tap every round. I like that in the game, you start off, the little card market has many items and just a couple of artifacts. And as you go each round, there are more and more artifacts, less and less items, because it is representing you getting further and further away from civilization. So you're finding more stuff on the ground, and there's less supplies coming in. That stuff like that, I'm like, that is so awesome. Cool. Like, that is really how it would go. It's sneakily thematic, and it keeps me coming back.
And I think this is going to be one of those games where it's like, it's kind of like a lot of the games where you're like, oh, is this game that good? And then you play it, and you're like, oh, no, that's right. I do love this game.
It is really fun.
It's going to be one of those games that it's kind of always like that.
We have the expedition leaders, which is a great thing. Gives you variable player powers. I enjoy. I wouldn't play without it. And if there's, the co-op thing, I'm very excited to hear more. So it's gone down just a bit, but still number 19. It's not like it's fallen off the face of the earth. That's my number 19. Fine.
All right, cool. My number 19 will be much, much higher on Mike's list. And this is A Feast for Odin.
You don't know. It's not even on the list.
It's not even on the list. A Feast for Odin is a big old Uwe Rosa. I think it's my highest. No, it's not.
Nope.
It's definitely not. I love A Feast for Odin. A Feast for Odin was, to this day, one of my biggest surprises in a game in terms of, like, because Feast for Odin is a big game where you're Vikings, and there's like 60 different worker placement spots, and it's very overwhelming to look at, because you're just like, whoa, you can go to any of the worker placement spots. It's not like, oh, later in the game you'll unlock these. It's like, no, you can go everywhere from the beginning of the game. And
something
it's
like Caverna brings out those actions slowly.
Exactly, which is one thing I do like about Caverna, but like Feast for Odin, it's like, nope. And then there's all these islands you can get. You can get like longhouses, and you can get these things and that things, and you can go. And it's just like, and you look at your home player board, and there's all these negative points on it, and you're like, oh my gosh, how do I do this?
There's a lot.
It's like, it's a game that's very, very overwhelming. So when I first played it, when I was first being taught it, I was like, holy crap, I'm gonna hate this because it's too much. And I remember playing it, and I was like, whoa, that was amazing. And I specifically remember, like, I have to show Mike this game because Mike is going to love this game, but I'm gonna have to kind of convince you to play it because it looks wild.
It was early in our days. It was early in our days of really ramping up the weight of game we played.
And to this day, it's still one of my biggest surprises of a game where I thought I wasn't going to like it, and I really did.
You're right. That has to be number one.
It's high up there. And it's one
I forgot that you kind of went in with your hands tied behind your back.
I had no idea. And it's so good. And this is one of those games where it's a big sandbox where you can kind of just do anything and everything for the most part is like a pretty viable strategy. And you can do a lot of this or a lot of that and a lot of this, and you can get this, and you can get islands, or you don't have to get an island. You can get this instead. And it's just like so many different things you can do. And it's so fun. And actually, I do think that the game is like, at least the worker placement part of the game is actually not that complicated, because everything on the board is very clearly laid out. It's like, oh, you get here, you're going to get 2 coins and some green beans. And you go here and you can turn in a wheat for a cloth. And it's like everything is very, very
tile.
Everything is very simple in terms of what you're doing. There's just literally like 60 places you can go to. And
so what do you
wild.
Want to do?
And Feast for Odin is so good. If you like those kind of games where you're like, this time I'm going to try to do this. I'm just going to get a bunch of pigs and see what happens. And like, you can just try that and see how it works. Every single time I play Feast for Odin, I go, I'm going to try this time. And I really enjoy games where I get to do that, where I just go like, I'm going to try this and see if this works. And it's like, I find a lot of enjoyment in that, to the point where if I lose, I don't really care, because I'm kind of like, well, I don't know, I was just trying to be a pig farmer. It didn't work. All right, whatever. You know, and you can just move on and do something else. I really love it. And then they came up with the Norwegians expansion, which takes the game and makes it even better, especially at 2 players.
Gotta do it for 2.
And it's just like, oh my gosh, it made it even better. And it was already such a good game. And then Norwegians just blew it out of the water. And I freaking love Feast for Odin. I think it's so much fun.
If you thought all that, you probably should have ranked it a lot higher.
No, it's fine right exactly where it is at 19.
I don't think that's right.
But nonetheless, I really love Feast for Odin. Mike likes it more. And so that's my number 19. Feast for Odin, it's absolutely outstanding. Let's get number 18. My number 18 is, I haven't heard about it on your list, so I don't know if it's going to be on your list, but this is The Networks. It's not even, wow, I hate this game so much. The Networks
it's just
so
cool
good
for me.
That's true, it has for you. The Networks is still pretty high for me. This is a game where you are running a TV station, which is a theme. TVs and movies
One of the best themes ever made.
That I don't understand why it isn't used more in board games, because
especially the way they use it here, where you're programming shows.
Yes, and this is a game that really feels unlike any other game.
Yeah.
Where you have a TV station, you have 3 slots, 8 p.m., 9 p.m., and 10 p.m. You're working in prime time, only prime time, and you are getting different shows, and you are slotting them into those spots. Certain shows will want ads on them so you can make some money. Certain shows will require you to have stars on them. And those are all going to give you viewers. And viewers in this game are your points. You want to have the most viewers.
X million viewers. Right?
Exactly. And the cool thing is about the game is like you keep these shows for multiple rounds, but every round they're going to age because you're going into the next season. Every round essentially is a year of shows.
Yeah.
And so the cool thing is some of the shows will gain more viewers as they go along. You're like, okay,
they mature.
First season's okay, got like 10 million viewers, but the next season, it's going to get 12 million viewers, and then 15 million viewers, and the 4th season, it's going to get like 2. It's going to drop off the planet.
They changed the writing staff.
Oh my gosh, Felicity cut her hair, and everyone's like, I'm out of this. I'm not watching this show anymore.
There is a thing where every show eventually falls off. No show lasts forever.
No show in this game is good in the 4th season, as it shouldn't be. Now, granted, there's only 5 seasons in the game, so you're not going to keep a show for that long.
No.
But so you're getting that, you're getting these stars, the stars will add viewers and stuff like that, and like all these things where like certain stars this is like the action star. So if you put it on an action show, they're gonna give more of a bonus. And then there's like ads you can get which give you money, and then there's like these network cards which give you powers and stuff like that, or kind of one-off things.
Man,
and there's so many different ways to manipulate this game. And then as you go through the rounds, as you go through the seasons, the shows get better and better, but they're getting more expensive as you go.
Yeah.
And you have to like budget and all this stuff. And I just think it's outstanding. It's got this really weird art style that really works in the game. And every single show is just a pun on a show that already exists.
Yeah, the action star is like very much Arnold Schwarzenegger, and there's things that are
instead of Fringe, it's Cringe. It's and so instead of So You Think You Can Dance, it's So You Think You Can Flail. And it's just all of them are just jokes on pre-existing shows, and it's so funny. And the thing about this game is this game, to this day, still has one of my favorite solo modes.
Yes,
and I've played it a bunch this year.
I think that's why it's higher on your list, is because I don't solo it like
you do. I do. I solo it fairly often, especially when Mike was on paternity leave. I ended up playing it a couple times. And I was really reminded, like, oh yeah, that's right. This is one of my favorite games of all time. I freaking love the Networks. And it really does feel like nothing else. It feels so unique. Every single part of the game is thematically tied into the game of like, why am I doing this? Oh, I'm doing this action because I need to get a star for this show to boost up my ratings. Everything thematically makes sense. I think it's such an outstanding game.
I agree, man.
The Networks is number 18. I think it's
you got me hyped again.
Dude,
for
we should play it again. You will remember. I love it every time. I
love it every time. That's true. My number 18, Nick. You know who I love?
Who?
Uwe Rosenberg.
You too.
You just talked about Uwe. Did you talk about Uwe?
I did.
Hallertau. It's great. Play it.
Wow, this is this high?
It's so good, man.
It is. Wow, really?
I don't know. I like it.
Wow. That's not a critique. Wow.
Hallertau's a newer big farming game from Uwe Rosenberg, which I think if definitively this or one other Uwe, which I haven't talked about yet, will be my like outside of like a patchwork. I'm talking about like the larger size Uwe games. Hallertau is the one I'd be like, let's start here.
Yes.
I'm not going to give you Feast for Odin just now.
No.
As Nick talked about, it's very overwhelming. There's a lot going on. Hallertau, for whatever reason, in my brain seems much more accessible.
Yes.
Maybe that's naive because I know a bunch of Uwe games or something, but it just feels a little simpler. And in this game, you are let's be real, farming stuff,
Yeah, you
getting
are.
a bunch of things.
You're barley and stuff.
You're raising sheep. There's only one type of animal here. There's only
That's
sheep.
Nice.
You're raising sheep, which might produce, they'll produce like wool and milk for you and things like that, which is very useful. And you are really kind of combining the action, the workers' placement spots with card play.
Yes.
So in this game, there are different types of cards you can get throughout the game that are going to do some of it will be kind of like an end game scoring type card. Another one, there's other ones that will give you kind of income each round if you get it into play. It'll all come down to either like having certain things in your supply or spending certain things from your supply. And you're kind of getting these cards out, and then what you're doing is every round you're basically trying to communally like work on. We're all playing against each other. But we each have like a town center, community center that we are trying to like improve by kind of digging out.
It's basically Stardew Valley.
Basically Stardew Valley. What you're doing is like you're turning in a bunch of those resources that you've grown and acquired throughout the round. You're turning in resources to kind of move these boulders down the path on your board, and that allows your community center to upgrade. The main thing that's going to get you is at the end of the game, if you upgrade enough, you're going to get a whole big ton of points, like up to 70 points that way. And you're going to get more workers, because every round you get a bunch of these blue cubes that are your workers. You start off with 6 per round, but you can upgrade and upgrade and upgrade until the point where you have, I think 12 per round. So you can really then start to do more and more with your years in the game. So this game is, I don't know, it's just really fun. Uwe does this a lot where there's just a ton of cards and stuff.
So many.
There's like 4 different like categories of cards. 2 of the types of categories have like 3 or 4 sets that you can use. I don't know why Uwe does that.
Bro.
I don't mind it, but I'm like, is anyone actually getting through all these cards?
Well, it's like Feast for Odin. There's all the occupation cards. I'm like, there's like hundreds of them. Like,
if I ever come across the same card twice, I will never know because there's so many. But
you'll never know.
Uwe gives and gives.
He does.
So it comes down to all that card play and stuff. You're growing hops, you're growing things. And one thing that's really fun is if you use a field, you kind of can like improve the soil and raise up your little plot where you're going to plant stuff. So if you plant like a hops on the 5th level, the most valuable field, it'll produce 5 hops.
Yeah.
Versus if it's all the way down on like the 2 level, it'll produce 2 hops. If you use a field though, it degrades the soil and you have to move your plot down. If you don't use a field, and then it raises back up because you're allowing the land to recover. So that whole thing is just like a really fun thing that is like true to farming. You have to like really pay attention to the soil, making sure you're not depleting it about all of its nutrients and things like that. So I really love that about the game. And it's just fun card play mixed with worker placement. I just really
it's great.
Enjoy what it is. It's very pretty, I think.
It's also one of the prettier. It's one of the prettier ones of Uwe's. Yeah,
just a bunch of resource management, turn them in to get these cards played and get some points out of it thing.
Yeah, I like it. I mean, I think it was in my 90s. I like it a lot less, but I do like it.
I think it's great. That's number 18. Hallertau.
All right, let's get into number 17.
Number 17 has replaced a big game called Terraforming Mars for us. It's Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition.
Indeed.
We like...
Terraforming Mars was still in your top 100, I think, though, wasn't it?
I don't know. Maybe it was.
Well,
Point is, it's a lot lower now, if not out of my 100 altogether.
Ares Expedition's a better game. Fight me.
We prefer Ares Expedition over Terraforming Mars. It's nothing against Terraforming Mars. It's just kind of, we got most of the expansions. We don't have Turmoil, but we have most of the other expansions and content. And this is a game that, for us, just got really bloated with stuff. Yeah. And now, if you want to play with all the expansions, it's like kind of for us, we're like, it's too much work to remove the cards that get added. So like, we're going to put it all in, but you have like these ships over here and they do some stuff. And there's like another planet Venus over here. And there's this over here. And we're on this different map. And what are the milestones again? It's just too much for us. We just can't hang in with it. Plus, they have an app for it, which has Prelude, which is essential to play that game. And you can do all that stuff digitally, which we have, and I'll gladly defer to. So physically, I want to play Terraforming Mars Ares Expedition. The main reason is it gives us all the stuff that we enjoy in Terraforming Mars, aka putting out those green cards, which boost your engine so that you're producing more and more stuff. And it shortens things down a little bit. It's not like a filler game now, but it shortens things down a little bit. And it just makes the game in our minds, or I'll speak for myself, my mind, more dynamic, because now you don't have a set structure of a round like you do in Terraforming Mars. You instead borrow from Race for the Galaxy, where you have basically 5 phase types. And we're all going to, at the beginning of the round, select a phase that we want to make sure it gets activated. So I chose phase 1, Nick chose phase 3. We reveal, and whatever cards get revealed are the only phases that are going to trigger that round. Nothing else will. Additionally, if I chose phase 1, I get a bonus version of that. Everyone else gets to do phase 1, but I get to do phase 1 with a little extra goodies on top. And that's awesome. You can play out those green cards. You can play out your red and blue cards with phase 2. Your phase 3 is doing a bunch of actions. After you play all those blue cards out, you can start to tap them and stuff. I just like that not everything happens every round.
Yeah.
If you're running out of resources, guess what? You better choose the production phase to make sure that you get to produce your resources. And if you chose that action, guess what? You get $4 extra.
Yeah.
Great.
Sweet.
I just like the fact that there's this ebb and flow of the types of phases, and it just keeps the game moving quicker, and it ramps up really well at the end.
Yeah.
It does all the stuff that we love. You and I don't get too into, I think I'm a little more into like the board dynamics in Terraforming Mars in terms of the area control that sort of happens. Nick really doesn't care about it. I can take it or leave it. Ares Expedition doesn't get into it. Like, good. I don't care that much anyway. So, great. You know what I mean? It's easy. But it keeps the engine building aspect very much intact. So that's my number 17, Terraforming Mars, Ares Expedition. I just think it's solid.
It's great. It's great.
It's great.
It'll show up later.
It's great.
My number 17 is Tuantinsuyu, the Incan Empire. This is my favorite of the big T games from Board and Dice.
Yeah.
I really, really like Tuantinsuyu. This is one of those games, again, kind of like Feast for Odin, looks incredibly intimidating because it's just this giant board with this big pentagonal like temple on top of it and just a million places on it. And ultimately, it's not that complicated because it seems like there's a lot, but it's really like 6 or 7 actions just repeated a whole bunch of times, basically.
Yeah, they're basically these symbols and stuff, so it's not as overwhelming as it seems.
Yeah, but it
the
looks
action types
wild. Yeah, and so this is a game where it's classic T board and dice game where you're building up an empire kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you are playing out these god cards. These god cards are essentially going to dictate where you're going to put one of your meeples. And your meeples are your workers. There are a bunch of different colors of meeples, like red, green, yellow, white. And they all will do different things when you put them out.
There's a little bit
of
of that 5 tribes thing. The color of the meeple can matter.
Can matter, basically. So if you put out this symbol, that means I have to put my meeple down on one of these symbols somewhere out on the board. And then depending on what color meeple I put out there, it will do the action, but could also have some kind of bonus. So there's like some green and blue spaces out on the board. There's green and blue meeples. So essentially, if you put out a green or blue meeple on a green or blue spot, you then get to do that action or another action around that symbol,
like a bonus action.
an extra time. And then basically, there's all these symbols, and they're attached to all these actions on the board. And then basically, when you put your meeple out, if there's another meeple of the same color next to that one, you essentially get to do 2 of the actions around.
Yeah, you always
there.
be surrounded by 3 actions. You get to do 1 for sure, and then maybe 2 or 3 or
maybe
even
four,
like 4.
5, and you can really get a lot if you really chain them together. It can be pretty wild. And so the whole point of the game is you're trying to do these actions, but you're really trying to do as much as you can with one meeple, basically. And because you never really want to just do 1 action. That feels like kind of a waste. You want to do at least 2. And so it depends. Like the yellow one, there's 5 sides of the big pentagonal temple. And if you're the first one to place it on that side and that level of the temple, and you put a yellow one there, you get to an extra thing. So it kind of just depends. A red one allows you to pick up another meeple off the board. There's all these different things. And then it's just a bunch of, you're getting these weavings that you're trying to match up to make a really long tapestry. You can go around and do like some very Eurogame fighting where you're basically turning in these warriors.
You're conquering.
But it's very much like you're turning these warriors. They're just cards, and yay! Now you put a disc out here and you get a bonus. It's like it's very, very. There's no real fighting in the game. And there's all these different things you can do, and I just love the action selection. Again, it looks so overwhelming, but I find it to be so incredibly
Once you
fun.
get into it, though, it's not as hard to grok because like you have a priest that's moving around the top of the hill.
Yeah.
Depending on where they are, you can go anywhere, but there'll be a lot of food costs because your followers are having to travel really far. So you're kind of only focused on a few sections at a time.
Every single turn, you're essentially starting at the top of the pyramid there, and then basically, if you're going down the same side as your priest, you only have to pay a certain amount of food. But if you want to go around and down, you have to pay a lot of food because it's really a lot of traveling. And so you're trying to manipulate your stuff in a way where it makes it cheap as possible, and then you can build stairs, and that allows you to go down cheaper because it's easier to get up and down the temple because of the stairs. All this different kind of stuff. There's a billion different things, and it's really, really good. This is again those kind of we were kind of like, whoa, this is gonna be wild. And then we played it, and both of us were like, wow, that was really good. And then we played it a couple more times, and I'm like, wow. I think this is my favorite T game. I played it a couple more times. I'm like, oh yeah, this is by far my favorite. I like it so much.
Really good.
I think it's incredible.
Yeah.
Twantin Su, The Incan Empire is my number 17. I think it's absolutely great.
Very nice. Good picks for 17, Nick. We got a number 16. Sweet 16.
Let's go.
Coming up next.
My number 16 is a kind of an anomaly for me because this is technically a war game, and this is War of the Ring.
Oh yeah.
Now,
yeah.
War of the Ring is Lord of the Rings based, so
I mean, you know,
that's why I like it. That's
it's
honestly
not
why I
a
like
war
it.
game. It's the
For
war
us,
game.
it is at least. Yeah, I love War of the Ring. War of the Ring is one of my favorite games. It is Lord of the Rings in a box. We are humongous Lord of the Rings fans. If you didn't know that already,
Nerd.
huge nerds. Love Lord of the Rings, and War of the Ring is really Lord of the Rings in a box. It's a two-player, really only game. You can play four-player, but you're on teams. It's a two-player game. And one player plays the Shadow Army, one player plays the Free Peoples. The Shadow Army is essentially trying to conquer a bunch of different like strongholds and get points
you're trying
that way.
Convert Middle Earth into your image.
Your image.
Just burn
and then
it
the
all.
Free People can win through military like that, but it's very, very difficult for them to do so. But most of what they're trying to do is destroy the ring.
Gotta destroy the ring.
Of course, if they destroy the ring, they win. And so it's this very asymmetric game where you're really doing different stuff. You have all different kinds of cards, all different kinds of... The actions are the same, but the way you kind of go about them is different. Yeah. And it's just this giant Lord of the Rings game. But the cool thing is it's Lord of the Rings in a box, but you get to tell your own version of Lord of the Rings because the Free People starts with the Fellowship, all 9 in the Fellowship like you would. But at the same time, you can have people leave the Fellowship, but you get to choose. So you can be like, all right, cool, we're moving. You know what? Merry Pippin, they're going to Gondor right now. They're just going right now.
Straight away.
And
you're like, well, in the books it happens here.
And Boromir, Sam, and Frodo are going to Mount Doom.
Yeah, you can have Boromir roll to the bitter end with you if you want.
And
it's cool.
And there's different reasons why you might have people leave the Fellowship, but it's really, really cool because you can kind of tell this own version where instead of like everyone meeting in Gondor, you're like, no, you know what? Gimli's going to go up and defend like kind of the dwarven strongholds up in the north. And you're like, he's going to stay up there and help out there. And you can really tell these really cool stories. And then it's got these dual use cards.
Delicious.
Where the top card is always going to be some kind of action that you can play with one of your dice. Or in the bottom card is always going to be some kind of battle action. Because obviously there's tons of fights.
You're
it's a war
scrapping
game.
quite a bit.
And so the cool thing is you're rolling out these dice every round. The dice are going to dictate what you do. Whatever comes up on the dice, those are the actions you get to do. And you have to adapt constantly to basically whatever you
might not roll what you're hoping for.
And again, the Shadow Army is just really, really strong militarily. That's really all they're doing. And every time their troops die, they just go back in the pool and they can come back out. But the Free People, anytime one of their troops die, they're gone. And so it's this really tough, tight struggle. The game's always really, really close. And it is just... It's incredible. It's just incredible.
It's so
if you
fun.
love Lord of the Rings, I think if you didn't love Lord of the Rings, it'd still be a really good game. But if you love Lord of the Rings, this game is just like bonkers good. Yeah. It's so good.
I think it's really cool that they find a way in a balanced way to make it thematic where like Mordor is much more powerful than you are. You're the Free People. They are much stronger. They are going to win in battles a lot more. But they have to win a lot more battles to win. Whereas if you get 4 victory points from battles of Free Peoples, you win.
Yeah.
But you
need 10
it's
as
an
the Shadow Army.
uphill battle to do that.
It's so hard.
But the game isn't imbalanced as a result because there's just you have to work it different. And I'm like, that's so cool to do it where like you feel the overwhelming onslaught, but there's a way to do it like the books. I mean, it's kind of amazing that they do that.
It's so good. It's just so good. It's one of the most popular games ever for a reason. People love War of the Ring, and it's outstanding. It's my number 16, War of the Ring. I absolutely love it.
Very nice. I have the same game actually for 16.
No, you don't.
It's Prague Kaput Rainy, baby.
Same game.
Same game, essentially, but this one's in Prague, a.k.a. where would Prague be in Middle Earth? What would that be?
I don't know, by Lasanach.
There you go. That's what I would have guessed, too.
Boom.
Prague Kaput Rainy is another Vladimir Suki game. It's my Vladimir Suki part of the list, apparently.
It sure seems like it, yeah.
This is a game where you are building up the city of Prague. You mentioned it a few lists ago.
Yeah.
You are building up the city of Prague. You are working on this great cathedral, building up the Hunger Wall, bunch of Prague stuff.
You're my hunger wall.
Please just feed me. Like, we're going to use these eggs for bricks. You're like, can you use them for protein in my mouth? Please. In this game, you are ultimately coming down this action selection crane, this wheel that spins around. That'll give you a choice of 2 actions, of which you will choose one, depending on how how recently that action has been used or how late it's been on the wheel. It'll be more valuable or cost you more to use. This game comes down to all these bonuses because there's things you can do. Like again, You can build out parts of the city with these like hexagonal tiles. You can add to the hunger wall, which goes around your player board or a part of your player board. And you are kind of managing your stone and gold, the two resources you're using in this game, to do all these things. You can work your way down the King's Road and eventually, I don't know, you're working on St. Charles Bridge or whatever it is. Yep. It's all this stuff that's like true to Prague and whatnot, but there are all these just like basically different avenues to explore, to get yourself resourced up, to work down various tracks to score, and everything comes down to bonus, because when you take an action tile along the middle rung of your action wheel, it's a little bonus. You get like maybe a couple stone when you take that action. Ooh, that's another decision to make. There's all these fun decisions to make because I'm like, ooh, I want to trigger this bonus, but I also want to do this action. Can I find a combination that works for that, or how do I eke out this? I need to get some eggs, because if I'm going down the King's Road and I spend eggs, I can get like an extra action out of it and stuff like that. There's just a lot of fun things to explore. It does like very typical Euro game stuff, you know, which is like spend resources, do these things, get points. But I like those kinds of games, and it does it very well. And so I've always really enjoyed the kind of tightness that game gives you, because you only have so many turns. You really feel the pressure of time in this game in a great way.
There's not that many turns.
It's really not that many turns, and how do you eke out as much as you can? And you can actually get quite a bit done, so it feels very satisfying. And you can chain together all these combos, and again, these bonuses. You cover up this thing, it gives you some bonus resources or these red tiles. So now where I've gone on the cathedral, these tiles these little tokens are worth more points and things like that. There's a lot to explore. And it's just very satisfying every time you play it. So that's number 16, Praga Kaput Rainy.
It good. All right, that's number 16. Let's get number 15.
Much like Nick said earlier in this list, this game's gonna be higher on Nick's list. My number 15 is Viticulture. Viticulture and all its editions and versions and things, of which at this point there's been several. We came into it the Essential Edition that added Tuscany. Now we got Viticulture World as well. It's just great. There's a lot to explore.
There's a lot, yeah.
Winemaking is not a theme we expected to fall in love with, and yet here we are.
Yeah, it's a cool theme, honestly. Even though we don't drink, I still think it's a cool theme.
The processing of making wine is just like so romantic and stuff. And I'm like, man, I'm not a drinker, but I'd make the heck out of some wine. Yeah. I'd absolutely crush some grapes.
I love vineyards. Vineyards are beautiful.
They're so cool. So viticulture is all about running a winery. You're trying to make great wines. You're giving tours. You're upgrading your fields and your processing. You're aging grapes and wine in your cellars, and ultimately selling that wine for victory points and kind of prestige in the form of like residual monies that you get. Yeah. There's a lot of fun things to do. This is a game that, like, in our mind, what we would consider just like a worker placement game through and through. It all comes down to, you know, I'm gonna put one of my workers down on this spot to plant these green cards, these little vine cards into my field, so I can then start to grow grapes. And it's worker placement in the classic sense of there's not that many spaces to go to. If in a two-player game, only one person may occupy any of the action types. So I'm like, I go there and you're like, I needed to plant. What do I do? Do I use my grande, which can go anywhere and go there anyhow? You know, and so you're kind of playing that little game of like, I took this action spot, and you're like, I guess I'll give a tour and get some money or build a structure or something. And it's just all about doing a bunch of winery stuff. I think the thing that we really enjoy about this game that I love is that there's this kind of A to B to C to D to E, which is the ultimate objective, and kind of playing through the steps to do that. Okay, I need to make some wine. Well, I gotta get some grapes. How do I get some grapes? Better plant a field. All right, let me plant a field. Let me get those grapes. Let me harvest those grapes. Let me crush them down. Let me let those age to the right level.
Yeah, it's very linear.
Do I make a blush? It's just satisfying to go through that linear path from like nothing to like now having this engine built up and starting to produce those grapes. And there's this great ramp up where in those last couple rounds, all of a sudden you're like, no one's at the 25 points in Tuscany to like trigger the end. But you're like, you're not as far away as you think, because now we all have a bunch of stuff and we are ready to rock and roll.
Engines
and
running.
It might go like that. So viticulture is just really fun. We've enjoyed the couple plays of Viticulture World we've done. It's very hard.
It's very difficult.
Something to note if you're out there and wondering, like, do I want to play Viticulture World? You better be good at viticulture. Like, you better be straight up good at that game, or you are going to have a hard time.
It's very hard, yeah.
That's the kind of knock where I'm like, I wish it wasn't so hard. At the same time, we are pretty well versed in viticulture, and it's a good challenge. So
it is.
There's a lot of fun stuff. But viticulture, all the versions from just the Essential Edition. We love Tuscany, of course. It's so great.
Always good.
It's good no matter how you play it, though.
Yeah,
It's a
pretty
great
much.
game. So that's my number 15.
Alrighty, my number 15 is a game that when we played it for the first time, we finished the game and kind of packed up and we're kind of sitting there and we were like, you want to play that again? And we immediately played it again a second time. And this is Grand Austria Hotel. Yeah. Grand Austria Hotel is a game we had heard about, had heard that it was very good. Finally got a chance to play
Heard is really good at 2 players specifically.
Yes, specifically 2 players, and I agree with that.
Stand by.
And we played it at a game cafe, and again, we played the game, and then right afterwards, we were like, do you want us to play that again?
Run that back.
And which we never do, because we always were like, hey, let's play something new, let's play something different, and stuff like that. And it was, Grand Austria Hotel is incredible. It's this really tough game where you are building out a hotel.
So good.
And this is a game where the starting player will roll all of these dice, and those dice will then get sorted by their pip value, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. And then each pip value has a different action associated with it. So like the 1s will get you like cake and streusel. The 2s will get you coffee and wine. The 3s will allow you to open up more rooms in your hotel, so on and so forth. But when you take an action, it's your turn, you're going to take one of the dice, and then you get to do that action essentially the amount of times that there are dice there. So if there are 4 dice and then I take one, I get to take that action 4 times. So in this case, if it's like getting cake and streusel, I can get 4 of
items.
cake and streusel. And then what you're doing is you are getting these guests who are coming down to your cafe at the bottom of your hotel.
They're a little hungry.
Yeah, a little hungry, a little peckish. And then if you satisfy their needs down there, so this person wants 2 pieces of cake and some wine, a drunk.
AKA someone who has have a good time.
Yeah, someone's here. Sorry, there's someone in your cafe who wants to party, and so once you give them that, then they'll go like, you know what, I'm gonna stay here, which I kind of think is weird. I've never been at a cafe.
I think it's funny. It's like
I'm
they
sleep
only
here.
stay if the cafe is satisfactory.
Which I think
like, is
funny.
anyone going to a hotel specifically for the continental
Like,
breakfast? Apparently, everyone here does.
Apparently, but nonetheless, and then they'll come stay in your room, and then all the guests have a different color, and they need to go in the same color room. So a red guest needs to go into a red room, and you're trying to build it out. The thing is what's tough about the game is you're constantly having to adapt to like the brutality of the dice, because you're like, okay, I have no more open rooms. I need a bunch of 3s. Boom, Mike rolls like 1 3, and you're kind of like, oh, that's not what I needed. Yeah. And multiple times a game, the emperor's going to come, and you have to essentially make sure, like, make sure everything looks nice.
Be spick and span.
Make sure everything looks nice. And there's so many things to do, so many things to think about, and it's just very, very tough, but in a very good way, a very fun, restrictive way. And it's just so much fun. It's absolutely outstanding. I love Grand Austria Hotel. And it was one of those games we played it, and we immediately were like, man, let's play that again. Let's do it right now.
And it can be brutal, and it's like better for it.
Yeah.
There's not many games that I am going to want it to be that hard.
You want the pain.
You do want the pain.
Yeah.
It really proves how great it is that I'm like, yes, please.
It's outstanding. It's outstanding. It's a great. Grand Austria Hotel is so much fun. I absolutely adore it. It's my number 15.
Woo! Let's get into 14, baby.
My number 14 is kind of 2 games, but I will say Great Western Trail Argentina, because I do like it more than normal Great Western Trail. But Great Western Trail is ultimately here. Great Western Trail is a great Alexander Pfister game where you are running cattle up to Kansas City, or in this case, Buenos Aires, because again, I do like Argentina a little bit better. And you're running your cattle up to Buenos Aires, and when you get there, you get to turn in your hand of cattle, because it's a deck building game where you're getting all these different cattle, and you want to have a unique hand of cattle, and then depending on how strong those cattle are, because different cows are better, have better meat, milk, whatever, and have better breeding values, and you count up all your breeding value, and you'll get that amount of money, and that also dictates basically how far you're allowed to ship out those cattle. In Argentina, you're shipping them over to Europe, and then in normal Great Western Trail, you're just shipping them across the U.S. And it's a really fun game. It's a rondel. Once you get up to Kansas City or Buenos Aires, you then go back to the beginning and you go through again. And there are different action spots that you can stop at on the way there. Those are going to allow you to get more cattle. They're going to allow you to get employees. They're going to allow you to switch out. Like, I'm going to discard these 2 cards in my hand and draw new cards. You can do
most of them come down to that. The hand management is the crux of the game.
You have a train in the game. You can move up the train, and that will dictate essentially they'll make it cheaper for you to ship your cattle farther and farther away.
You get shortcuts,
Shortcuts, all sorts of different stuff. And then you also have your own personal buildings, so you can get carpenters, and you can then build your own buildings on the map, which will slow down other people, and then also gives you essentially better versions of the buildings that are already on the board.
Yep.
And it's just so much fun. This game has been a classic for a little while now. It came out in 2016, I think, and people have loved it, loved it, loved it.
Great Western Trail is an all-timer.
Yeah, and I really like Great Western Trail Argentina. I love Great Western Trail, but Great Western Trail Argentina just changes some small things in ways that make ultimately a pretty big difference. Where now, when you ship your cattle when you're at Buenos Aires, you ship them onto boats, and then those boats then don't go away right away. At certain points of the game, certain boats are going to ship off to Europe, so you need to make sure you're on those boats for when they ship.
Yep.
And then once they're over in Europe, you then will put those cows essentially into the city, and you will get
There'll
points.
be a disc that you've shipped off, and that'll be
Exactly, and it makes the delayed reaction of the shipping makes it much more interesting. And then there's also now there's granjeros, which are farmers around, and instead of it kind of takes the place of like the hazards in the game. Yeah. And now you get these granjeros, and you can have them for objectives like you do with hazards and stuff, or you can bring them on as employees themselves because to ship these cows, you're going to have grain, and because you gotta feed them, and these granjeros will allow you to get grain. And it's just the little changes they do on top of just some other little changes here and there really make the game, in my opinion, even better, and I already really, really, really liked it. So I love Great Western Trail. I specifically love Great Western Trail Argentina.
Sure.
It's really cool. I'm very interested in Great Western Trail New Zealand because I'm hoping it's going to be cool again.
I'm so curious what they're going to do.
So I love Great Western Trail Argentina. I think it's really, really outstanding. And yeah, it's my number 14. It good.
Nice. My number 14 is a big old civ building game called Through the Ages. This is a game, what was that?
It's too big. It's too big. It's too big.
What? No.
It's too big.
Not when you play digitally, which is the only way to play.
That's true.
And then it takes care of all this bookkeeping for you.
Yeah, it's true.
Through the Ages is a fantastic game that I have played specifically through the digital app, which
hundreds
is
of times.
Amazing. I have played this game hundreds of times on the app. It's so great. And this is a game where you are literally, it's a civ game, a civilization. It's based on civilization. And you are starting in the kind of age of antiquity and the ancient leaders and stuff like Cleopatra.
Yep.
And you are moving all the way to modern times. And you have Bill Gates and whatnot as your leaders. And you are building wonders of the world. And you're building up different types of buildings that are going to produce kind of your building materials. So you might start off as like stone, then ironworks and things like that. As the game progresses, you need to manage your food to feed your people and grow your population. There is science, which is going to help you develop great technologies. And then, of course, culture, which are your victory points specifically. Yeah. You have to manage the happiness of your population. So something like a religious building will provide a little bit of culture and a lot of happiness and kind of contentment for the people. There are things like theaters, which provide even more contentment for the people. Sports arenas, which in the early days are, like gladiator arenas. And then eventually like football stadiums and stuff like that. So I like this game because you basically have multiple engines you're managing. You're managing all those resources, trying to build them all up as fast as you can. Science, of course, is important because as you age up into the next eras of humanity, you want to get better versions of a lot of these buildings. You can upgrade the older kind of types of buildings for science.
You can go from like coal to oil or something like that.
Exactly, and you can produce basically these tokens, which now are worth 2 of a thing versus just one. So you're a little more efficient with your tokens because your tokens are limited. And that's where the digital implementation really helps out. Yeah. There's a lot of bookkeeping about like, if I have this blue token on this card, it's worth 3 science. But if it's down here, it's only worth 1 science. You have to keep all that in your head versus with the digital app, it just calculates everything for you. As your population grows, they start eating more and more of your food. So even though I'm producing 5, I'm consuming 4, I only have 1 left over. It does all that bookkeeping so that you can manage your resources and just focus on your strategy instead. Every leader you can have 1 leader at a time will give you a specific boon or something that they can do that no one else will have. There are the wonders of the worlds that you're building that give you all sorts of stuff. You can upgrade your government, which gives you more actions or a stronger military, things like that. You, of course, another resource is your military might. You can then go to war and do aggressive actions against your opponents to steal their resources and hurt their population and a bunch of things like that. And there's a bunch of events throughout the game, both good and bad. Yep. There's a lot to explore. It's really, really fun to play. I just loved going from the ancient times to modern times and seeing all of these like famous things from our history throughout.
It's a very good game. I would never, ever, ever play this game not digitally.
I want to try it once, but it's absolutely, undoubtedly best in its digital form. Do not play it physically. It's just too much work.
Yeah, it's cool. You like it a lot more than I do. But
I really love it a lot. So that's my number 14 is Through the Ages.
Well, dang. All right, let's get into number 13.
Number 13 is a game that you talked about before, and we really love the kind of uniqueness of the theme. This is Fayum,
Wow.
Fayum, which is by
That's
Friedman
really
Freeze.
high.
It's so cool, man.
It's cool.
This is a game where you are kind of building up the lands in Egypt for the pharaoh. Like everything what's really fun about this game is everything that's built out on the board and stuff is not owned by any player.
Yeah.
Everything belongs to the pharaoh. We work for the pharaoh. So if Nick builds some roads to this one tile, I'm like, cool, I'm gonna pop a settlement down there. And you're like, I was gonna make a vineyard there. I'm like, nope, too bad.
Too
Pharaoh
late.
said something different to me. Here you go, vineyard or city or whatever.
Very fickle,
I
that
said.
Pharaoh. Just really.
So it's really fun that the only things you own are your money and your reputation, which are your victory points. And so this game starts off with this board, which is kind of this basic looking board. I actually really like the look of it.
It looks like hieroglyphics.
Kind of, yeah.
That's the thing,
It's
it
kind of
looks like
basic.
hieroglyphics, kind of.
I really like it. There's all these crocodiles out because you're kind of these like marshlands and stuff, and then there's some rocks which is representing the highland. You have to kind of drain the swamp and get rid of the crocodiles to make this land kind of habitable, and then start to develop roads and settlements, and those settlements can upgrade to towns and things like that. And it's all used with this really clever card play. Everything comes down to this card play because you're gonna, on your turn, you can buy a card, you can play a card and make use of its abilities, or you can basically do like an administrative action, which is going to be kind of recouping some money and cards and stuff like that. Where this game becomes so interesting is as you're playing those cards, you will put them into one discard pile. It's kind of a deck building game, except for you're never going to shuffle that deck of cards.
Ever.
As you play out cards into your deck, you cannot shuffle that discard pile, and when you do an administrative action, you can get 3 cards back for free, and you will get them in the reverse order of when you played them. So basically, the last card you played is the first one back into your hand, and then on and on. If you want to get some cards that are now deeper in your discard pile, you have to start paying money to do this. And so you can effectively bury cards if you're not careful. So you kind of want to sequence your actions in a way of like, I need to get this card back. This is very important to me.
Yeah.
So make sure I don't bury it.
Or sometimes you want to bury it because like this
Yeah,
card is
I
like
don't
one of
need
my
it
basic
anymore.
starter cards. I don't need this card anymore.
Yeah.
I'm gonna put it here and bury it down there.
Absolutely. And the other thing that's cool is like you're gonna be buying more and more cards throughout the game directly into your hand to be used immediately if you wish on the next turn that you have. And these cards kind of do a power grid thing where there's gonna be 8 cards out on the board, but only 4 of them are ever available. The 4 lowest numbered cards. And as the cards become higher numbered, they become generally more powerful. That's kind of representing the game, you know, moving this way through time. But that's cool. What's cool is you shuffle that deck of cards, and so you might have a situation where you have 8 cards that are out there that are all very high numbered. So those 4 cards that are available are actually kind of really advanced. And so that really changes the dynamics of the game where it's not so linear
Or,
now.
like the 4th card, which is available, could be a really good card, but then Mike buys another card, they bring another card, and then that one pushes it back out.
Pushes it
You're
out
like,
because
"Oh,
now
I wanted
there's a
that
lower card in
dang
its
it."
place. Yeah,
So-
so there's a lot of interesting things like that, but they're all going to facilitate building up different, you know, things, roads, working on these monuments, building up cities to towns and stuff that are going to generate resources for you. And then a lot of those kind of higher number cards are going to be spending resources and stuff to generate reputation, which are your victory points. It's just really fun. The whole managing your hand of cards and when you do the administrative action and get some money, get some cards back, when you spend your money to buy cards, it's just infinitely interesting.
Yeah, it's so good.
I think it's so fun. So that's my number 13. I think it's
outstanding.
for my money, like one of the more unique games out there. I think it's really great. It's not super available over here, although Board Game Geek has been selling it. 2F Spiel is a German company and stuff, but BGG covers it. And I think it's worth a try. I really do. That's number 13.
All right, my number 13, I talked about the roll and write version of this one not too long ago, and this is Rajas of the Ganges, but the normal game Rajas of the Ganges. Rajas of the Ganges is crazy good. It's so good.
It does so many great things really
It
well.
really does. This is a game where you're essentially going to have 2 scoring tracks. You have the fame track and you have your money track, and the game will end once someone crosses those tracks. Arc Nova style, but this one did it before Arc Nova.
Boom.
And so you are trying to cross those tracks. And the cool thing is, like with the game, is you can get like a little bit of fame and a ton of money, or a bunch of fame and not that much money. You usually meet somewhere in the middle, but you can kind of dictate. You can choose what you want to really focus on.
How do you want to focus?
And you are building out your estate with all these different like shops and essentially different markets. There's like silk markets and spice markets and tea markets. And you can also build really big buildings, which will give you fame. And your markets, of course, will give you money. But it's a worker placement game where you're putting out your workers, but almost everything you're doing, you're going to be turning in dice. These big, max, dumb chunk dice, thicky, dumb chunk dice.
They're nice, translucent, beautiful.
Yeah, really have no need to be as thicky, dumb chunk or as beautiful as they are.
They roll real well.
But they're really nice. So you have these really nice dice, and those are your currency. So if you want to go here and you want to buy this like green building, you will have to turn in green dice to buy that building. If it's 10,
of a combined value of 10 or whatever.
Of 10, so you can turn in a 6 or a 4, and then you get rid of those dice, and then you can get that building. If you want to do this market, you have to turn in this. If you want to, and the cool thing that's nice about the game is 1s are valuable, 6s are valuable. It depends on what you're doing.
Exactly.
There's a big river going through it, and if you want to move up the river, you can only turn in a 1, 2, or 3. If you have a 6, guess what? You can't go to the river if you only have a 6. So the good thing is, it's not just a game where it's like, oh, whoever rolled better wins. It's like, no, you can roll low, and there's lots of stuff you can do.
There's abilities to mitigate your dice. If you roll a 2, guess what? You can use some karma, flip it to a 5.
Flip it to the other side. So you can do so much different stuff in this game, and it's just so much fun. It's just one of those games that just like, every time we play it, I'm like, this is great. There's not really an expansion for it. There's like these little goodie box expansions.
Yeah, these like mini modules.
Tiny little modules that'll change like this one tiny part of the game. But like ultimately, it doesn't have an expansion, and it's still outstanding just on its own.
Really
it just
need
works.
one. I don't,
It's absolutely gorgeous as well. Dennis Lohausen really knocked it out of the park with the art in this one. It works so freaking well. I just absolutely adore Rajas the Ganges. I think it's so much fun. I never ever get tired of playing it.
I see no lie in what you said. Yeah, I will say more about it later.
Indeed. That's number 13, Rajas the Ganges. It's so good. The roll right is also very good.
Play it.
Even though Mike hates it.
I rank it so high, it's crazy.
That's my number 13, Rajas the Ganges. Let's get to number 12. All right, my number 12 is my highest ranked roll and write. I still think it's the best one out there, and that is Cartographers.
Yeah.
I still think it's the best one out there. Cartographers is one of those games that you introduce to people, and then they go out and buy it. And then they introduce people, and then those people go out and buy it.
Not making it fun as heck,
It's just great. You are making maps in the kind of role player universe by Thunderworks Games. They have a lot of different games in this universe. And you are making maps, and so you start off with a sheet of paper that is blank. It's just a grid because you don't really know what's out there.
Anywhere. You don't know where anything
you're
is.
exploring out there with theme stuff, you're like, oh, look, there's a village right there. Oh, cool, there's some monsters over there. Oh, cool, there's some water over there. Great. And essentially what's going to happen is you're going to have, every round you're going to flip over a card, and that card is going to have two things on it. It's going to have some landscape types, and then some shapes, polynomial type shapes, Tetris type shapes that you're going to draw in there. The cards will either have two land types like water and village, and then one shape option, or it's going to have one landscape like farmland, and then two options, and you get to choose what you put in there. But on top of that, there are 4 scoring conditions throughout the game. There's A, B, C, and D. In the first round, you're going to score A and B. Then the next round, B and C, then C and D, and then D, and then A again. And so you know what's going to score. And it might be like the D card might be like for every completely full column, you're going to get a certain amount of points. So you want to fill it in. Doesn't matter what it's filled in with. It could be a whole mix of whole different stuff. You want no gaps. And so you're like, okay, so that's one thing I'm focusing on is I really want to make sure I'm tightly packing everything together to blam. There might be one though, it's like for every hole, you're going to get certain points. So like this one, you're like, okay, well now I don't want that to happen. I want to do like this. And there's those scoring conditions change it so much because again, sometimes you might want to do this in a very specific way, and the other time you might want to do the complete opposite. And the fact that they all score twice and you know when they're going to score, the cool thing is after the third round, you're never scoring B again. So you're like, okay, well now I never need to worry about this again. I can put these farmlands anywhere because they're never going to score for me again. And it's just so darn satisfying. And it's one of those things that I love about Roll and Rice where everyone's working off the same stuff. Everyone is flipping over a card. You can play this with an infinite amount of people because everyone's working off that one card flip. And it's just so fun to watch people do stuff differently. And then you're going to have monsters come out which are going to give you negative points unless you surround them with stuff. It's just so dang good. There's also Cartographer's Heroes, which gives you heroes, which allows you to kind of deal with those monsters. And then now there's like multiple map packs. There's like one with like a big old volcano and stuff in it. And so like they've really supported this game, but just the straight up base Cartographers, I still to this day think is the best roll and ride out there. And it just goes over so well with people. It just always seems to go over well. And it's just, I think it's a great way to get people into the hobby because it's a game that they've never ever seen before. They're like, whoa, I didn't know this could be a thing.
Yeah.
And it just works. And because you always know how things are going to score, you can constantly reinforce stuff in the game. We're like, okay, we're in the third round. Now remember, these two things are scoring right now. So make sure you're focusing on these things. This thing doesn't exist anymore, basically. And so you can really constantly reinforce stuff in the game, which is why I think it works really, really well with new people. Yeah. I love Cartographers. I think it's so dang good. It's my favorite roll and write, number 12.
I respect that choice, my man. My number 12 was mentioned by you earlier this list. I have combined them similarly. My number 12 is Great Western Trail or / Great Western Trail Argentina. I do enjoy Argentina a little bit more. I saw Amy Maggie from Thinker Themer, who you should subscribe to.
You should, they're great.
Mentioned about like maybe there'd be occasions to just play Great Western Trail because I think Great Western Trail Argentina is heavier with some of the considerations, but I really enjoy the changes that Great Western Trail Argentina does to the game. Everything you mentioned, I fully agree with. I love that in Argentina, now you have the cattle having certain strength in addition to their breeding value. That helps you work with the granjeros because you're like, they need strong cattle to work these lands. If you're going to employ them, they need strength provided. So that's kind of another resource that you can manage a little bit. Yep. The whole kind of the fact that you deliver these cattle and you get to do a couple more things with those discs is really interesting, and it keeps the core of Great Western Trail absolutely intact.
Yes.
Working that rondel, building out buildings, getting employees and filling out your player board to become kind of stronger and stronger, be able to do better versions of the actions. All that stuff is still in place in a big bad way. Great Western Trail just persists. It's really great. It's one of those games that, like, we talk about this sometimes where it's like games are kind of static. They don't change much from game to game in terms of like, some games have a ton of variety in terms of their setups. Great Western Trail does not.
No.
You might have a slightly different breakup of like the types of buildings you have available this game. That's mostly it.
Yeah.
And it's still super duper good. I think that is an absolute like testament to the mechanisms that are in that game that like that doesn't get you down. Whereas in other games,
it would.
You play it and you're kind of like, this is good, but I'm done with it now.
I'm over it.
Great Western Trail does great.
I've seen this game, yeah.
And now there's Great Western Argentina. It helps because now there is a lot of these changes. So now I'm like, ooh, I'm all invested once again. So that's my number 12, Great Western Trail, specifically Argentina being my favorite. But I will play either version, no problem. Yeah.
All right, let's get number 12. That's number 12. Let's get number 11. Mikey. What just missed?
What just missed?
Just missed the top 10. What trash game is right here?
It's a hot take, Nick. You know what game just missed? Ark Nova. Get out of my face. You're never making my top 10. Maybe you will. I don't know. I like zoos a lot. Ark Nova is my number 11, man. It's the game that could have been great, but it's trash. It's number 11 of all time. This is a game where you're running a zoo.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic game. You mentioned it, I think, in the last list. And this game does so good at taking wonderful parts from other games like Rajas of the Ganges, the action selection from Civilization New Dawn, the kind of tags system from Terraforming Mars. I don't know if these things were deliberately taken from those games, but it borrows from the DNA of many great games to create, I dare say, an all-star team of a game.
Yeah, kind of.
This game is so fun. The theme for us, making a zoo, infinitely interesting and wonderful. I love zoos. I love that they are so focused on conservation. This game is very much focused on making conservation a central part of your zoo. The best zoos on Earth are solely focus on education and conservation. I love that. It's so fun to play out the cards, all the sponsor cards that give you ways to break the rules and get bonuses for focusing on a certain area. I like that you have the association board where you can become a sister zoo with a different continent. So now you can get animals and stuff for a little bit cheaper price. I like that you're going to try to sequence your actions so that I'm taking this action, this action, this action. Now my animals are all the way at number 5. Guess what? I get to put 2 animals down at once. Kaboom. And then that brings up the next action I want to do next. And now it's the most powerful it can be. There's a lot of really fun things to consider. It's just one that like we did not get a chance to play in 2021, but it was already very much the discussion of board games. And then we finally got a chance to try it, and I was just like, ooh, that lived up to the hype
really
and
was
more.
Like,
you know,
oh, that's good. Holy
it's
crap! Yeah,
really, really good. It didn't quite make my top 10, but that is not a knock on it at all. I wish I could keep it. Since it's not in my top 10, I will be culling it this year.
Yeah, that's the problem. I hate to see it.
They have an expansion coming, which was inevitable, and I'm excited because it seems.
How big is the game even? Oh my gosh.
You know, like one kind of knock they give you is that sometimes the card market doesn't flush out very fast.
I don't think that's a big deal at all. I'm sorry.
I don't either. I think it's overblown a little bit, but I like that in the expansion that they announced, it's going to help with that. So I'm like, okay, you don't necessarily have a thing that's wrong with the game, but it's a weaker point of the game, and they fixed that up. Let's go. Water animals are coming. I'm just excited. Ark Nova is fantastic. It is worthy of its hype. It is worthy of the quick ascension up on Board Game Geek it has received.
Number 4, yeah.
It's no joke. It's a great game.
It's really good. Yeah, it's really good. Alrighty, my number 11, the trash game of trash, that trash to number trash 11. No, this game is outstanding. This is the highest game that we do not own.
Oh.
And this is Planet Unknown.
Oh.
Planet Unknown made it to my number 11. I'll tell you right now, Planet Unknown made it to my number 11. We haven't even played it that many times. I like it that much. I really, really do. Planet Unknown is so...
That's amazing, man.
Freaking good. This is a game
That's
where...
amazing to me.
This is a polygonal tile laying game where you are building out a planet.
It's super fun.
You are terraforming a planet, essentially. And it's got this really cool Lazy Susan in the middle, which is a kind of spinning thing that has a bunch of different tiles on it.
Yeah,
and the
depots.
active player will choose a depot to be in front of them. And then everyone, one thing that's great about the game is it's all simultaneous because you cannot affect each other at all. And so basically, the active player chooses a depot to be in front of them, and then whatever depot is in front of you, you get to choose one of the 2 polynomial tiles that are on that. And they're going to have a bunch of different, essentially, landscapes on there.
You're going to have like 2 types of...
There's going to be like water. There's going to be like grasslands. There's going to be like science areas.
Cities, which is your civilization.
Cities and stuff like that. And then you're going to take that tile and put it onto your planet somewhere. And then basically what's on there, you're trying to match some stuff. And that essentially, every time you place a tile, you're going to get to bump up one of the 5 tracks. The 5 tracks are going to correspond to the different landscapes on there. So there is like a green track, which is like the grasslands track. There's a water track. There's a civilization track, science track, that kind of stuff. Bumping tracks. Mike, what do we love to do?
Tracks, baby.
Bump tracks. That's what we love to do. So good. And so you're bumping tracks, but the cool thing is while you're bumping these tracks, there's a bunch of bonuses where you're like, ooh, I'm gonna bump this. Oh, now I get to bump another track. I'm gonna bump this one. Oh, that one has a bonus right there. Lets me bump another track. I'm bumping this one. It's tile laying polygonal games, which we love, and bumping tracks, which is our favorite. Yeah. And you are doing a whole bunch of different stuff in the game. But one thing that's nice is like that alone is so much fun. But on top of that, you have a corporation, which gives you a bunch of essentially powers.
Yep,
so
technologies,
as you move up this technology track, when you're playing stuff on your board, you always have to play adjacent to something. Until you get to this point of this technology track, where also now you can just put stuff wherever you want. And so you get stronger as you go. But the cool thing is on the backside of every basic corporation is an asymmetric corporation. Boom. So everyone can play a different one. And on top of that, there is a planet, but then there's also like 10 asymmetric planets. You can give everyone a different one, and they are like wildly different.
Very different.
They work totally differently. So you can play it where everyone's the same. You can play it where everyone has a different corporation, but they're all working on the same kind of planet. Or you can just mix it all up.
Really, whatever you want to do.
And here's the thing. It's number 11, and I've never played anything other than just the basic planet and the basic corporation, and it's still that damn good. It's so freaking good. I cannot wait to get this game. We just haven't had a chance to really get our hands on it, but we will at some point. I think Planet Unknown it's so good. It's just like, it's absolutely incredible.
You can play on Sovereignty if you want to ever give it a go, and it works really well over there.
And it's got a really good solo mode. Yep. It's just one of those games that's so satisfying to play because everyone's simultaneous. You're always doing something.
You feel very accomplished as you play.
There's no downtime. It's just so freaking cool. I love Planet Unknown so much. Made it all the way to number 11. We don't even own it. I've only even played it a couple times, and I'm still that like obsessed with it.
If you owned it, it'd probably be number 3.
Honestly, I think we'd own it. We got to play it more. It would be my top 10. I honestly think so.
Wow.
I love Planet Unknown. It's my number 11. But here's the thing. The problem is Planet Unknown. It is trash.
It's trash.
Because it's not in the top 10.
Listen, Nick, all year long, we only make top 10s.
Yes, that's
this
right.
is not that. These games are trash. They're dead to us forevermore. We have one more list to do.
Gosh.
If you've been following along with us this whole time, first of all,
been a
thank
journey.
you so much. It has been a journey. I know it's been many hours of content for you to consume. We
Thank you
hope
for
that you have
consuming
enjoyed
it.
it very much. We do have one more list to do.
The list.
Below us here are all of our patrons. We mentioned
Yes.
our Patreon at the beginning. If you can support our Patreon, it really means a lot. It helps us pay for the studio every month of the year.
Yeah.
We could not do this without our patrons. Thank you so much. Consider being a patron today because we do additional content for all of our top 10s throughout the year that only go to our patrons. So consider being that today.
Yeah.
Thank you. Check out Tabletop Alliance. The number over here, whatever it is how many kids we've helped because every dollar helps a kid. So give today if you can. If you are following along and giving us your top 100, hit us with those games. We've been loving following that.
It's
And
been
everybody, get hyped for the 10 to 1 because nothing has mattered
Until then.
up till now until that. All right? We'll see you all in the next one. I'm Mike.
I'm Nick. And bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for watching that latest installment of the Top 10. The Top 100 rather. We're almost to the top 10 games of all time. 2211, still an absolute list of bangers. We want to give a big shout out to our channel sponsors, Lucky Duck Games, Restoration Games, the OG sponsors, and Board Game Geek. We want to give a big shout out to our month of December sponsor, the Supreme Padishah Emperor of the Known Universe, Greg White. Oh my gosh, you're such a good ruler, and you've ruled over our universe very well, and you created it, which is also impressive, let's be completely honest. So thank you so much, Greg White, for ruling over our universe with such benevolence and such you're a little strict. You're a little strict sometimes, but we do appreciate you. Thank you so much, Greg, for sponsoring us for the month of December and for creating the universe.